Mustang Bob here. Today I want to talk about safety, particularly related to the smell of gas that you might have in your car, or maybe in the trunk, or maybe in the engine compartment. Mustangs have a few weak spots. One is the placement of the gas tank in the back. I have never personally heard of an accident where that gas tank ruptured and caused any injury to anybody, but it's not in the best location. It's basically the floor pan of the trunk is the gas tank. So if you smell gas in the trunk, you need to investigate it. And there's very little barrier between the back seat and the trunk compartment. And so vapors from that trunk area can get into the cockpit or the cabin of the car. Same with the engine. If there's a leak up there somewhere, either the fuel pump or the fuel filter or the carburetor, you need to investigate it. The smell of gasoline's very strong. It'll give you a headache after a while. It's also a safety and discomfort issue for the passengers, as well as if there was a fire, you could lose the engine or you could lose the car. So if you smell gas, you need to investigate. It's a little tougher in these older cars. They don't have catalytic converters, so the exhaust has a little bit of gasoline smell to it. So it could be an exhaust leak. That's worth checking out too. So let's get to it. I'll show you the weak spots on the car as far as the fuel system. And if you do smell gas, do your own investigation first. If you can't find it, go see a professional. Okay, let's start at the back here. Here's our filler for the Mustang. Screws on the back here. And comes through this metal fill tube. Then there's a rubber connection here to the actual gas tank. Underneath the mat here in the trunk, here's your gas tank. So there's a hole in the body here, and then the tank fits down into that square hole. And you can see here it's bolted in. I don't really think it creates a big safety issue. I mean, if you got rear-ended, there's plenty of metal here to keep this tank from getting crushed. I've never heard of one in a rear-end accident rupturing this tank and having a fire or explosion. But what we're looking for here is a source of smell for gasoline inside the car. So if this rubber right here was to get old and cracked, you could certainly get gasoline vapor in the trunk that you could smell inside the car. Because here's the back seat of the car. There's really nothing to keep vapor from going from this trunk area into the car if it's in here. So if you smell gasoline, the first thing to do is check the trunk. Make sure this rubber is good here. And then you can smell maybe the inside of the this jute part of the floor mat. And if you smell that and it smells like gasoline, you could have a leak here. Or sometimes the top of this tank will rust. When you fill it with gasoline, there's maybe minute holes in this that gas vapor or liquid could bubble through into this jute on the back of the floor mat. Now, smelling the one that's in this car and observing it, there doesn't appear to be any gasoline leaks in this trunk. I don't smell a lot of gas back here, and I don't smell gas inside this particular car either. This is a 67, one of my favorite Mustang colors of that period. This one is a yellow color called Springtime Yellow, color code 8, and I like it, especially with the black interior. So that's the first thing you should do is check the trunk. Now, there are some aftermarket kits that they'll sell you a piece of sheet metal that can screw in behind that back seat if you're worried about protection from any vapor that might get into the trunk compartment, starting a fire. And also there's a fellow in Illinois who makes a steel plate that you can screw in on top of the gas tank just to give it extra rigidity in the event of an accident. Like I said, I've never had a problem with any of the cars I've owned. I did get rear-ended once in a Mustang, and you know, these are 18 gauge steel cars. They're pretty heavy. You might get your bumper dented. You might even get the rear valence plate damaged, or the trunk lid, but I've never had a gas tank get ruptured in one of these, so, or heard of anybody who did. So there's the trunk area. Let's move on from here. Okay, now we're in the engine compartment of a 66 Mustang with a 289, and here you can see where the gas line comes in. It's metal underneath the car, metal tubing, but then here there's a rubber piece. You can squeeze that, make sure it's pliable, not cracked. And then here's your fuel pump, mechanical fuel pump, and there doesn't appear to be any leaks around it either. So that would be another place to look. And then the last place to look out of your mechanical fuel pump is this one's metal. There's a metal line that goes up to the carburetor, so that's not going to likely leak there into the carburetor. We've removed the air cleaner so we can see this gasoline line. Here it is again, coming from the fuel pump. And there's a rubber piece here. Check that, make sure that doesn't leak. And then you can see the carburetor itself. Right here there's 4 screws that hold in the square-shaped piece. This is your accelerator pump. When you pump the gas pedal, you're going to be squirting raw gas in there, which will help to start the car. And also when you floor it, it'll give you a squirt of gas to pick up your speed pretty quickly. Now, if inside there's a rubber diaphragm, if that diaphragm leaks, they have a hole in the bottom here of this piece, and raw gasoline will drip out of it down onto this intake manifold, which will be hot when you're driving the car. And those little drips of gasoline, doesn't take much of it to give you a strong smell inside the car. So if you smell gas inside the car, I'd start at the trunk, work your way up looking for leaks, and if you don't find any, when you get to this accelerator pump, it's easy to take it off, and if you have to replace that diaphragm, they're about $10. Easy to do, so let's try that. You will need to have a offset screwdriver because this distributor cap is kind of in the way of a straight shot with a screwdriver. I have an offset screwdriver that's about 90 degrees, and that makes it a lot easier to get on and off. One thing that happens is if there's dripping here, some people might think that it's the gasket. The diaphragm also serves as the gasket, might be leaking. So they tighten up on these screws as hard as they can. And all that ends up doing is bending the corners of this square, and it doesn't stop the leak. So when you take that accelerator pump off or open it up, you want to check and make sure that it's square, that it's not bent at the edges. That'll make sure it seals well. Okay, so this is what I mean by an offset screwdriver. It's 90 degrees. That way, instead of coming straight in, you can come from the side, and you can see I can get to these screws here on the accelerator pump when I wouldn't be able to do it directly with a straight screwdriver. So I'm going to take these 4 screws off, and then we'll take a look at that diaphragm. And I went ahead and bought a spare diaphragm, and I'll put that in. Okay, so here's the last screw coming out. And then this whole pump will pop out. Don't lose your spring there. There's a spring there. And you see the hole right there? If this accelerator pump fails and leaks, see that rubber ring around there? Gas will drip through that little hole right there. And I'm told that these 10% ethanol gasolines now will wear out those rubber pretty quick. so it could have a pinhole in it or a tear, because I can smell gas. But it's easy to replace, and the parts are readily available and cheap. So we'll put a new one in. That should solve that gas smell that I'm getting. And I think you can see here from the color, gas has been dripping right here and then vaporizing. And you're going to get a strong whiff of gas anytime that happens. It doesn't take much gas to make a strong smell. 2-4295. It's called Accelerator Pump Diaphragm. And I got this from Napa. It was about $8, I think. I love Napa. They've got really good quality parts, and if they don't have what you need in stock, they can get it by tomorrow. So anyway, they've always got what I need. And here's your replacement diaphragm. It should go right in there. New diaphragm in, put everything back together the way it was. We've got 2 of the screws started here on the top, so I'll put my 2 on the bottom, and then we'll use our offset screwdriver to tighten them back up. Of course, we don't want to over tighten them, just get them to where the screw head makes contact with the metal, and then give it about a half a turn more. That will be plenty. Yeah, so here's a close-up of that offset tool. I used to buy my tools at Craftsman when it was part of Sears, and they have great tools. Offset screwdriver, number 2 Phillips, and a 1/4 inch slotted. So that 1/4 inch slot there really comes in handy to get these 4 screws out. Okay, so we've got it all back together now, just the way it was in the beginning. And you know, the more I look at it, the more it looks like right down there, you can see where gasoline dripped and then evaporated. So I'm pretty sure that's where it came from, through that little hole there. And so we'll start it up. I'm not going to put the air cleaner on because I want to check it for leaks. You should definitely always have an air cleaner on your car, not only to keep the dust and dirt out of the engine, but if you ever have a backfire, you don't want raw gas shooting up. Could easily catch your engine on fire. I see people who think it's cool to drive around with no air cleaner, and I always tell them you got to have something on there, some kind of mesh to protect your engine, and mainly to prevent a fire. I had a friend once whose engine caught on fire, and he lost his hood, and he lost all of his wiring. So let's give it a start up and check for leaks. See any leaks, so I think we got that taken care of. I don't smell any gas, so she should be good. So I'll button her up and we'll put her on the road. Thanks for watching.